There's a moment in almost every case when the story can start to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but just enough that you might think something isn't quite right. Questions mount. In the killing of Joseph Smith, that moment came for his family when they looked at all the official accounts of the incident holistically. When they put them side by side, Smith's family members, especially his cousin Keeshia Hendrix, say they began to see cracks. Welcome to Kentucky Case Files, the Joseph Smith case, Part 3, A Mountain of Questions. I'm Emily Steele.
And I'm Marcus Roland. Let's start with the account from admitted shooter Ryan Woodrum. According to part of his statement, he walked up to the driver's side of the vehicle he says was stolen from his driveway, opened the door, and Joseph Smith lunged at him while seated with his hands in the air. Woodrum brought his gun up and fired at Smith. Here's Woodrum speaking to state police in a recording that Kentucky Case Files obtained through an open records request.
And he turned as I opened the door, and he turned and come out on me. I started to draw.
In another part of the Woodrum interview, he said,
And then when I started to draw, he kind of seen me, and by the time I got a couple shots off, he had turned and tried to climb over the console into the passenger seat.
This is the moment everything hinges on, because if Smith posed an immediate, credible threat to Woodrum's use of deadly force in self-defense is likely justified.
But Kentucky self-defense law has limits, and one of the biggest involves who created the danger in the first place. That's the most significant issue here, because if someone initiates or escalates a confrontation, the legal justification for deadly force can disappear. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Ryan Woodrum, as he and others told police, armed himself, tracked down the vehicle, approached with a gun, and initiated the confrontation. So had he become the aggressor?
In Woodrum's interview, he documents 5 moments. 1, he draws his gun. 2, Smith sees him. 3, Woodrum fires. 4, Smith tries to climb over to the other side of the SUV. And 5, Woodrum continues to fire. In other parts of the interview, Woodrum described a lunge and says Smith raised his hands in the air. Here's State Police Detective Tony Harding asking a clarifying question during Woodrum's interview, and then Woodrum's response.
The moment you open the door, he turns, you said his hands come up, and he lunges at you.
Yeah.
And then do you know how many times you fired?
It was between 4 and 5. I don't remember exactly.
Smith's family wonders whether Smith's movement was indicative of a lunging attack or a sign of surrender or expression of surprise. Instead of attacking, could Smith have been trying to escape the truck, exiting through the SUV's driver's side and going around Woodrum before he saw Woodrum's gun? We spoke with Russ Baldani, our Lexington criminal defense attorney. He was not involved in the case, but has represented defendants in many other high-profile cases.
It's pretty hard to claim that you were in fear of death or serious physical injury when somebody's retreating. It's pretty hard to justify self-defense when you put 5, 6, 7 bullets into someone. So there's all kinds of different facts that play into the legitimacy of a self-defense claim. It seems to me that the fact that the victim was shot multiple times, that undermines self-defense a little bit, because, the whole idea of a self-defense claim is you're trying to protect yourself from death or serious physical injury. And you would expect that one shot to a person is most likely going to incapacitate them and kind of put an end to you being at risk of death or serious physical injuries.
As a defense attorney, how would Baldani have liked the facts if he had had to defend Woodrum?
As a defense attorney, I don't like those facts, okay?
Yeah.
I don't like anything more than 1 or 2 shots to incapacitate the person. I don't like it when my client's made a statement that he continued to fire after the person is turned away. I mean, those aren't helpful facts for a self-defense claim.
Of course, one can argue that events unfolded in seconds under extreme stress and that perceived danger, even if mistaken, can still shape how someone reacts in what they think is a life or death moment. Smith's cousin, Keeshia Hendrix, and her family question how Smith could have posed a physical threat. A relative described Smith as a little guy, real little. They also say that in a fight-or-flight situation, Smith was the type to flee. Here's Hendrix.
Joseph was a pussy. Everybody knew that. He could not fight. He would crawl up in a ball.
Smith's half-brother, Joshua Amaral.
I've heard a lot of stories of him getting into fights, and the same thing happened when I got into a fight with him, and the same stories I've heard. He always balled up until he took the fetal position and started crying, and he's not a big guy.
And finally, Yvonne La Follette, Joseph's aunt.
Joseph wouldn't hurt nobody. He was scared when it come to violence and stuff like that. He avoided that.
Then there's the question of a weapon. Woodrum told police that he knew his wife Brianna's gun was likely somewhere in the vehicle because she kept it under the seat. Here's Baldani.
That's when I talk about facts that are either helpful or hurtful, to the defense. That's something that, assuming he was charged, that would be a fact that the defense would be playing up pretty substantially as far as what's going through shooter's head. Shooters, somebody's stolen my wife's vehicle and there's a gun in arm's reach. So, but then again, on the other hand, that could be a reason to get the police involved instead of the vigilante kind of justice. Hey, I'm going to chase down this guy that stole the car and deal with the situation. I mean, that's a bit problematic right off the bat.
But when investigators asked Woodrum the question, did you see anything in Joseph's raised hands, his answer was,
Did he have anything in his hands?
I couldn't tell.
Okay.
and when the police processed the scene, the gun was still under the seat, undisturbed.
Let's bring in Woodrum's wife, Brianna. Her statement to police adds context. She told police that when they realized the SUV was missing, Ryan left the house in a hurry without his phone while she was still talking to 911 calling for help. Because he didn't have his phone, she says she had to call a friend to go find him.
That matters because it illustrates further how this wasn't a controlled situation. It wasn't coordinated with law enforcement. It was fast, and it was driven by Woodrum himself. According to his own words, Woodrum didn't just encounter Smith. He grabbed a gun and went looking for him. But Brianna also mentioned something else to the police when speculating about what was happening right before the SUV went missing. She said they must have been watching her and her family.
Immediately when my car got taken, I said they had to have been watching. Like, they had to have been. There's no way. There's no way.
This statement stands out because of a rumor Keeshia Hendrix said she later heard. One that investigators never documented or investigated, according to records. That Smith might not have been alone that night. Here's Hendrix.
When I first got this police report, one of Joseph's friends reached out to me and said, hey, I believe that XYZ said he was with Joseph that night. He was still in the store when Joseph had gotten shot, but he took off.
Police records show no evidence that there was anyone other than Smith involved in the theft, or that they considered or investigated that possibility. Kentucky Case Files was also unable to reach or identify the individual Hendrix described. Hendrix said she tried to reach the rumored second person, but was not successful.
And then there's the Kentucky State Police records. KSP declined to respond to our request for specific comment regarding aspects of their investigation. Before any formal recorded interview, before detectives sat down with Woodrum, he gave a full on-scene account of what happened to State Trooper Cameron Wright. But the interview was not recorded. Here's Baldani.
The fact that the initial interview wasn't recorded, I can't see any real good reason for that. Nowadays, they're automatically recorded because almost every single police agency wears bodies. So
Right.
it would be pretty much automatically recorded. I cannot see any valid reason, in the 2020s why that wouldn't be recorded. So I do have an issue with that.
Wright timestamped his report as 2047, which is 8:47 p.m., when he read Woodrum his Miranda rights, and at 21:19 or 9:19 p.m. when he transported Woodrum to Elizabethtown for a formal interview with detectives. This means he spent just over 30 minutes with Woodrum at the scene, and with it taking 20 minutes to drive to Elizabethtown, Woodrum and Wright had 50 minutes together. We can't know exactly what, if anything, was said during that time. And from the moment Woodrum shot Smith until Wright dropped him at home, only a couple of hours had passed with no arrest, no charges.
Hendrix thinks investigators did nothing to investigate Smith's side of the story.
I don't understand why nobody reached out to any of Joseph's friends or family. I feel like that they didn't do their job. I felt like that they assumed Joseph didn't have any family.
Hendrix did talk face-to-face with the prosecutor handling the case, Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Chris McCrary, because she said she needed questions answered. But the meeting didn't really resolve anything, she said.
I feel like the interview was just to shut me up. I think it was a waste of time to go talk to him. And I told him, I felt like you did nothing, absolutely nothing. It had more questions for me than answers.
We talked with McCrary about his conversation with Hendrix. He would only say that her theories did not coincide with the evidence. At the end, Hendrix's unanswered questions remain just that, unanswered.
If Ryan was the aggressor, why was he, took to the police station and let go before the crime scene was cleaned up? Yeah, I did a timeline, and he was let go before it was all said and done.
According to police records, police dropped Woodrum off at his home at 11:15 p.m., and authorities left the scene of the shooting around 1 a.m. Here's Hendrix again.
I feel like it was an open and shut case to them. I feel like that, Joseph didn't have no family. It's okay. Nobody cares. Just, let him go. Why am I telling you stuff that you should have found out? Talking to about the attorney. Why am I questioning? Saying, oh, well, this person might have been with him, this and that, and I'm the one telling you rather than you asking me. There's so many questions. I could go on and on and on and on and on.
The question I have is, do we have record of what the interviews with the bystanders mentioned? What did the folks at the IGA have to say?
That's an excellent question, because since the first two episodes of the Joseph Smith case were released, we have been contacted independently by several people who were in the parking lot on the night Smith was killed. We've interviewed those who were willing to speak with us, and all of them say that they are not related or even acquainted with Smith, Woodrum, or their families. Now, what these conversations and messages make clear is that it's not just Smith's family members who have mountains of questions about how the case was handled. People who were on the scene do, too. No one that we interviewed was willing to speak on the record, saying Upton is such a small town. While we're protecting their identities, we have compared their accounts with one another and with the evidence in the public record. Kentucky case files cannot independently verify every detail of those recollections. Several of the bystanders told us that the police interviewed them only briefly and never followed up, or, perhaps more important, never talked with them at all. Kentucky Case Files has found no mentions in the police records and case files that we obtained that the authorities spoke with any bystanders, witnesses, or people inside the store. One person told us there were at least 4 people present who were never interviewed. One said that they think only a manager from the store was interviewed by police. There's no record of that. When we spoke with the witnesses, we weren't expecting their stories to match perfectly, and that's not surprising since it's been 5 years since the incident. Plus, memories of traumatic events are rarely perfect. They differed on the number of gunshots they heard and the timing of Smith's arrival versus Woodrum's, and the amount of time that passed between the arrivals and the sound of gunfire. But witnesses agreed on several points. They described EMS arriving before Kentucky State Police. They also described what they thought was a lengthy period during which Smith remained on the ground while emergency personnel waited for law enforcement to secure the scene. Those same witnesses recalled that during that period, Smith lay in the parking lot while people at the scene were talking amongst themselves. But here's the major point that everyone agreed on. Each of them told us independently that they felt something was off about how the case was handled. They were all adamant about that.
So when all the pieces are gathered, Smith's family is left with a version of events and evidence they think has significant gaps and inconsistencies. From the initial confrontation, to the claim of self-defense, to the investigation itself.
None of those details standing alone decides the case, but together they form the reason Joseph Smith's family struggles to accept the official conclusion. The central question for them remains simple. Did investigators truly uncover the full story of what happened that night?
Join us next time on Kentucky Case Files for the Joseph Smith case Part 4, Bad Choices, where we will speak more in depth with Keeshia Hendrix and discuss her thoughts, feelings, and reactions to the steps police and prosecutors took and didn't take in this case. I'm Emily Steele.
And I'm Marcus Roland. Thanks for listening to Kentucky Case Files, and make sure you like and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Sourcing for this podcast includes our original reporting and interviews, Kentucky State Police records, and the State Medical Examiner's autopsy report obtained through the Open Records Act, forensic toxicology research, and news reports from the Elizabethtown News Enterprise, WTVQ, WLKY, WLEX, WBKO, and WDRB.